Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my BookTube channel. Today I'm here with you just to share some of my very first reads of February. I do have another TBR list to share with you next week, but I wanted to share some kind of different reads with you today. I don't know, I've had kind of an odd reading month so far in February. I know it's just started, but haven't been able to settle on much. Not sure what I want to read. I guess I would term it as being sort of restless in my reading taste. I have a lot going on in life right now, and just haven't been in any one particular mood or genre. So it's kind of a strange, crazy, colorful, mixed up list for when I'm feeling restless. And so there's just it's kind of a hodgepodge, a little bit of everything. And so I hope you enjoy it. I certainly have been. And it's really opened my eyes up to some new authors. The first book that I wanted to share with you is this really lovely short story collection. And it's called The Story, 100 Great Short Stories Written by Women, Chosen by Victoria Hislop. And this is a really pretty, very bright edition. You can check out the inside end papers here. Isn't that cool? And I had shared another book with you that was somewhat similar. It's the same press, Head of Zeus Press, and it was another collection of short stories by women. So this sort of continues on with the series, and these stories are divided into three major sections. The first is love, then the second is loss, and then the third is the lives of women. And I was trying to find some love stories to share because it's February and all that, but I actually ended up choosing one. It's under the love category, but it's more like the love of a mother. This would be just such a wonderful story to read for Mother's Day. And it's by Emma Donoghue. Emma Donoghue is an Irish author, and her 2010 novel Room was a finalist for the Man Booker Prize, and she's written lots of things since then. And I had never read anything by Emma Donoghue, but boy, I sure will now. It's a really short story called The Gift, and it's written in a series of letters, so it's epistolary. And it's mainly written by the mother, and her name is Mrs. Sarah Bell, and it starts out on March 5th of 1877. And she needed to put her infant daughter, whose name was Lily Mae Bell, and she had to place her with an agency in New York, kind of like an orphanage. And she makes it very clear all along in her letters that she plans on coming back for Lily Mae Bell, and that she's just fallen on a hard time. She has no money. Her husband unexpectedly passed away. His name was John Bell, when the baby was only 3 months old. And so she's fallen on hard times, and she can't find work, and she places the child with this agency in New York. But it deals with orphan trains, and those were basically part of a welfare program that transported children mainly from New York City and eastern cities to homes that were mainly located in rural areas in the American West, like Iowa. And this occurred from about 1854 until the late 1920s. Now, I've never read that novel, Orphan Train. I've heard mixed things about that. I've heard good things and I've heard criticisms of that novel, but I definitely want to read more about the orphan trains now, maybe some nonfiction. And I would definitely want to read more by Emma Donoghue, because it was a very brief but powerful story about identity and ancestry and who we are and what our narrative is in terms of where we come from and where we're going. So I highly recommend it. Yeah. So that's that. And then next up, I haven't read an Agatha Christie mystery in a while, and so I was kind of in the mood for a cozy Miss Marple. And so I was trying to think of one that would be good for kind of cold gray weather. This one takes place in November, but it was still one that worked just fine for February, and that is Agatha Christie's At Bertram's Hotel. I love the Joan Hickson TV adaptation of this. It's marvelous. So in this, for those who don't know, Miss Marple's nephew Raymond and Raymond's wife have set Miss Marple up on a lovely extended holiday at a lovely, quaint, old-fashioned hotel in London that's near a park, and it's on a kind of a quiet, unassuming street, and it's called Bertram's Hotel. And so she's just gone there for a little visit and to visit some of her old haunts in London. And she used to go there when she was a young lady with a guardian, and remembers how beautiful and lovely, sort of in the old quaint Edwardian style, Bertram's Hotel was. And it doesn't seem to have changed at all. It seems to have frozen in times. They have incredible service and lovely appointed rooms and fireplaces and, you know, tea in the afternoon and crumpets and all of that. So Miss Marple goes there, but almost immediately afterwards, you know that something's going on at Bertram's Hotel and things aren't quite right. She discovers that Canon Pennyfather has gone missing, and there's also another plot that involves trains, and then there's a storyline that involves a very glamorous, jet-setting mother named Bess Sedgwick and her daughter, who is an heiress, and her name is Elvira or Elvira Blake. And so there's a lot going on in it. I wouldn't say it's one of my absolute favorite of the Miss Marples. I wouldn't give it 5 stars, and I wouldn't put it among my top 3 favorite Miss Marples, but there's only like, I don't know, 12 Miss Marples altogether. So, and I love Miss Marple, so, you know, I would give it at least 3 stars. And I love it because it also sort of reminds me of when I was growing up. My parents used to go to places like Niagara-on-the-Lake and also in Toronto, staying at Sutton Place Hotel. And we often stayed at places which were very much like Bertram's is described, as being sort of old-fashioned, and because it was Canada, it had kind of a British-esque air to it, and you know, the polished glasses at the bar and mahogany, and you know, the furnishings and the way it was appointed, and trinkets and knickknacks, and the customer service, and you know, a bellhop and all of that in the middle of a city. So, and in the case of Sutton Place, it was near Queen's Park, which was where I actually went to university. So yeah, it's just a fun one. It was a quick read, and then I had a rewatch of the Joan Hickson version on TV, which doesn't follow it exactly. It does take a few liberties with the storyline, but all in all was fairly faithful. So yeah, that was a fun one. And then I was sort of on an Agatha Christie kick, and I was in the mood for a Poirot story, but I didn't really want to commit because, again, I was feeling sort of restless and unsettled, and I didn't really want to commit to reading a whole Poirot novel after having just read the Miss Marple novel. So I was at the library. Sorry if this reflects in my ring light, but I happened to come across Agatha Christie comics. This is a hardcover. I guess it's a graphic novel. Oh my goodness, they have all of these available. And I happened to come across Cards on the Table, which I think is kind of a lesser Poirot story, but I actually really like it. And it was just fun to read it in a graphic novel form instead of reading the regular novel. And one of the things that's fun about it, there's a Mr. Shaitana who gathers all kinds of people together for a dinner party, followed by playing a few rounds of bridge at his house. And he's what he terms a collector. And so he's collecting murder suspects, and Poirot is meant to solve the crime. But the persons that he gathers together are Ariadne Oliver, Superintendent Battle of Scotland Yard, Colonel Race, and then there's also some other characters. But it's really just kind of fun. Because, anything that's like a locked room or a closed story that gathers all the suspects together in the same house or the same set of rooms, and then you have to guess who the murderer is in the story. It was just a lot of fun. It's a quick read, and I'm really starting to get into graphic novels, which was something I don't think I ever thought I would say. But as you will see from the rest of this video, there are a few here, and there's also going to be a few next time. So I like graphic novels and comics as an alternative to reading a regular full-length novel. So yeah, Cards on the Table. I really like this story, and I did look online because I saw they have Murder at the Vicarage. It seems to be the only Miss Marple that they have in this series, and I looked online because I was going to try to buy a copy. Oh my goodness, they cost like hundreds of dollars. I don't know why. I don't think the artwork is that special, but maybe they were printed on a limited basis or something like that. I don't know why they're so expensive. They're fun, but not $200 worth of fun. So I think I'll just keep trying to find them through the library for right now. But yeah, very enjoyable. Let me know if you've ever read any Agatha Christie graphic novels, and if so, which ones, and were they good? So now the next thing I did was I was listening to some podcasts. I have an Audible subscription, and I also have podcasts available on a variety of other platforms and websites. So I came across this really fun podcast. It's only got a few episodes so far, at least, but it's called The Swinging Christies, and it's focused on Agatha Christie's writing and plots and social culture as exhibited in her novels from the 1960s. And it is hosted by two gentlemen. One is Dr. Mark Aldridge. He's a writer. He's written several books on Christie. He's also an associate professor. And then there's also a gentleman called Gray Robert Brown, and I believe he works for Penguin Audiobooks Division as his day job, and then is kind of a Christie aficionado the rest of the time. So they're very kind of light, uplifting, fun, effervescent conversations that they have about sex, drugs, rock and roll, and the culture of the 60s and how things were changing. What's interesting, I'll just grab this again. It's interesting because in this book, as well as in several other Agatha Christie's, Miss Marple often remarks that things change. And if you'll recall, I said she notices that Bertram's hotel never seems to change, and it's actually kind of unsettling and odd because things do need to change with the times. Even if she's lamenting some of those changes, she realizes they need to take place. So it's almost like Agatha Christie is herself reconciling herself to the fact that it's not the same decade as when she first introduced her characters, and she worked in World War I on the home front and all that. Times had definitely changed by the 60s. But it's really fun, and At Bertram's Hotel was written in the 60s. I want to say it was 1965? Yes, 1965 by Collins Crime Club. But anyway, do check out The Swinging Christies. Now, I would say there are some spoilers on that podcast, so if you have not read the books or stories that are discussed on the podcast, you may want to read them first. And then this one is also a first for me. I got this book from the library, but I'm very tempted to buy it. It's one that I think I would like to keep, and that is called Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This book is so unusual, so refreshing. It's really hard to describe. It's about a young woman. Her name is Keiko Fukuura, and she grows up not having many friends. Her behavior is kind of considered strange by her peers, her teachers, her family. She doesn't really fit in. She always feels sort of awkward. She has kind of a different thought process than other people around her, and they're always trying to give her advice. But she really just doesn't understand where they're coming from or why there are these sort of unwritten, unspoken rules of society that everybody else seems to be cued in on, and she doesn't understand it. And so she is in university, and she actually is walking around on a quiet Sunday in downtown Tokyo, and she ends up at a stop called the Smile Mart outside of Hiromachi Station. And there was an ad in the window that they were looking for help at the Smile Mart, which is like a convenience store. And I'll just read you a little bit of the description here. I can still clearly recall the moment I came across the as yet unopened store. I'd been to see a No performance, I don't know what that is, N-O-H performance, as part of my coursework, and not having any friends, was making my way home alone when I took a wrong turn and found myself in a completely unfamiliar office district, totally lost. It occurred to me all of a sudden that the place was deserted. I was alone in a world of graceful white buildings, an artificial scene of paper models. It was Sunday afternoon, and there was no sign of anyone other than me in the street. It was like a ghost town. Overwhelmed by a sensation of having stumbled into another dimension, I walked quickly through it, looking for a metro station. At last I saw a sign, and relieved, was running towards it when I came across the ground floor of a pure white building converted into what looked like an aquarium. And so it says that it's opening soon, and they're looking for part-time help, and she gets the job, and she immediately fits into the culture, and she becomes one of their longest standing and best employees. And they give them uniforms to wear. There's food to eat. It's really interesting because all different levels of society shop there and stop in, and there are regular customers, and it becomes kind of like a little microcosm of greater society. And she's very happy there because she has a script to follow from the employee handbook, and everything is just really working out well for her. But then, of course, outside life intrudes, and the novel goes on from there. And so it's really hard for me to even describe it. It's so different. Immediately, the book establishes this sense of disrealia versus reality. It grapples with belonging to a work culture versus not belonging. And let me tell you, I've worked retail and I've worked in lots of customer service positions, and it really is true what the author discusses in here about social norms, about code switching, talking in different ways depending on the person you're with, and also if you're with a person long enough, sort of assimilating their mannerisms, adopting their behavior and their speech patterns and all of that. It's interesting that she sort of patterns her character after the script in the store work manual. It gives you sort of a bird's eye view into the store, into the foods they sell there, into the culture of a downtown Tokyo convenience store. It talks about societal expectations, and it also questions things like, do we really have individuality? Like, are we completely our own original individual person, or are we often just as much made up of the behavior and the stories of the people around us in our sphere, as it were, like the convenience store aquarium, the glass aquarium that she discusses. It reminded me a bit of movies like Barbie and The Truman Show, things that have bright, surreal colors. I could totally see this as a movie. And as like a comedy. But it's kind of a dark comedy. I actually did tear up at one point. And in a sense, as the parent of a child with autism, I couldn't help but thinking, kids with autism often adopt social stories or scripts to help them better communicate and get along with social norms in society, because often it's just so puzzling to them. They don't get things like idioms. Like if you say, oh, you're a chip off the old block, they take things very literally. And I don't mean to stereotype, all people with autism, but I'm just saying that there's often a grappling with, at least in my experience, I won't speak for others, but in my experience with my child and with my child's classmates growing up for 23 years, my experience was that they have trouble grappling with highly subjective idiomatic speech, cliches, expressions, things like that, slang, and often take things very literally. And Keiko Fukuyura does the same thing in this book. And you're just really rooting for her to feel like she belongs. It's so short, it's almost like a novella. Maybe it is considered a novella. But boy, I'm so glad I read it. I hope it's made into a movie at some point, and I'm definitely going to check out more by this author. Sayaka Murata is the author of many books. She's won many prizes. What's fascinating is that even though she's won Japan's most prestigious literary award, she continues to work part-time in a convenience store, which inspired this novel. I so respect that. I have mad respect for that. I sometimes get a little bit irritated with people who write, the great novel for whom their reality has been in large part just a sort of university setting and an academic setting. I really respect people who also engage in blue-collar work while they're writing. And she knows her topic inside out. It's so philosophical, it's funny, it's sad. Read this book. The next book that I read was also a short story collection. It is called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. The author's name is Deesha Philyaw. She's won quite a few awards for this collection. And I've read some of the short stories that deal with various generations of characters. It's all centered on various women at different stages of their life who, and having sort of the church as a central silent character within the rubric or framework of each story. And these women are often caught between what the church wants of them or expects them to be and the stereotypes that evolve around that versus their own private desires. There's stories about religious stereotypes, there's stories about double standards, there's stories about forbidden love, there's stories about longing, passion, sex, body image, questions of goodness versus fulfillment and what is fulfilling, both in a religious sense and in a personal female sense. And it's definitely not a read for somebody who likes to keep their romance sort of light and sexless or innocent. It is quite graphically sexual. So if you do not like that kind of story, then I would not read this. But for those who don't mind that and want to read it, it's definitely worth your while, and I'll definitely be looking for more from Deesha Philyaw because she's a really compelling writer. Well, next up, I want to share that I have been going down the greatest rabbit hole. I started to participate in Historathon, and I've been enjoying that very much. It goes sequentially from ancient history up through 500 and then through the Middle Ages and then the Renaissance up through the early 1800s and then 1820 something to the present. But of course, since I'm supposed to be focusing on ancient history, what am I doing? I'm reading all about World War II. I was looking at Amazon one day and looking at short story collections and came across this anthology from Virago. It's called Wave Me Goodbye, Stories of the Second World War. And it is edited by a woman called Anne Boston. Let's see if I love this cover. Isn't that scrumptious? I just love it. And this is a collection of World War II stories about women in different walks of life. And I'll just read you some of the names on this list. It's incredible. Elizabeth Bowen, Jean Rhys, I think it's pronounced Rhys, Beryl Bainbridge, Dorothy Parker, but I mean, there are just tons. Rosamund Liam, Jan Struther, Molly Panter Downs, Rose Macaulay, Olivia Manning, Barbara Pym, Edna Ferber, Dorothy Parker, Sylvia Townsend Warner, Doris Lessing, Elizabeth Taylor, and on and on and on. There are collections of women's writing, and then there are collections, and this is the latter. This is wonderful. So I have read 3 or 4 stories from this so far, and every single one I loved. The first one was by Elizabeth Bowen. It's called Mysterious Core. Very strange story about young lovers, and it's during the Blitz. They're in London. It is a very clear night that is just flood with the light of the full moon. It's shining down on everything in an unreal way. Almost similar to in Convenience Store Woman, she describes the buildings as being made out of white paper and the sun is streaming down and the sky is pure blue and the convenience store looks like an aquarium. Similar in this, everything is sort of white and just flooded with moonlight, and it's just a very strange, simple little story, but really wonderful characterization about this couple. And they're downtown walking to a park together. And then he has to stay with the girlfriend and her roommate in their very, very small, uncomfortable flat in the city because apparently his building's been bombed or something like that. And I should go back and check what the reason was. But in any event, it's just about the personal relationships and the interpersonal group dynamics between the girlfriend, the boyfriend, and the roommate. And it's very strange, but very good. And then there's another one that is called Night Engagement. It is also about the Blitz. This one is by Marjorie Sharp, and it's really funny. And it's about a mother and daughter who go to the shelters each night, and the daughter is looking for romance. She's looking for a husband. And so it's just written in a very funny, lighthearted way. For such a somber subject, Marjorie Sharp is just a master of seeing the humor in the situation. So that one was really good. And then there's a third one that is called The Bomb. Also a very short, strange story, but it sticks with you. It's by an author called Pat Frank. And it's about a young couple. Again, the woman works in a munitions factory. She literally makes bomb parts. And in the story, a bomb is falling very near to them. And they dive down to the pavement and cover themselves, waiting for the impact. And the whole thing is just sort of psychological, taking place in the amount of time it takes for the bomb to drop. Really good. And I found it really interesting because I thought this was a grouping of stories that were just by women. I would say instead it's about women's experiences during the war. The reason I say that is because I am under the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Pat Frank is a man. He was a male author. He was very popular. He wrote the book Alas, Babylon, which I have actually just purchased because I'd like to read that this summer. But he's famous for that. But I'm pretty sure Pat Frank is a man. And I think he's the only one in this entire collection. And I may have sleuthed out a reason for that. And that is because I was recently reading another collection of women's short stories, and the introduction stated that they did not include the author Jean Stafford in the collection because there was something about her estate that stipulated that she never wanted her work to appear in a collection that was just all by women. I don't know why, but I'm wondering if because Virago may have wanted the story by Jean Stafford for sure to appear in this collection, that maybe they had to add Pat Frank, and we're kind of hoping that the name Pat would be kind of gender ambiguous. I don't know. But I'm just wondering if I've come across something, like a little mystery that I've solved or something. But in any event, fantastic collection. I highly, highly recommend this for anybody who's interested in reading about the lives of women in World War II. Okay, this next book I also got from the library, and it was one of those kismet, happy coincidences that happened. I was reaching for one book and this was next to it. And it was actually in the teen section of the local library. It just looked fascinating to me. And it is a teens sort of, not really graphic, but well, you'll see when I show it to you. It's called Spies, the most thrilling spy stories from around the world. And it is by David Long and illustrated by a woman called Terri Poe. And it is what it says on the cover. And look at the art and the colors. Isn't that wonderful? And you know me with history. I have no qualms about starting out with something light. And what a wonderful rabbit hole to go down to learn about World War II and about spies. So these are just little sort of individual quick bios of 27 different spies, and the blurb for it says, a single spy can save thousands of lives. Spies and secret agents have been hard at work for centuries, risking their lives and sometimes changing the course of history. Discover 27 of the most courageous and daring, including Britain's first female spy, a teacher turned saboteur, the spy who sang for Hitler, and the man who never was. A unput-downable collection of real-life adventures, stunningly illustrated. So I'll just show you, for example, some of the ones that I read. Here's one. So this is the kind of illustration it is, and they just give you these little sort of 3 or 4 page bios of the person. Wow, Virginia Hall, what a life. Oh my goodness. I'm reading my notes here. Virginia Hall was a Canadian female spy. She was recruited by a woman called Vera Atkins in World War II. And Vera Atkins was the woman who most people believe Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond series, designed his character of Moneypenny around. So Vera Atkins recruited Virginia Hall, and she was from Canada. She had a wooden leg, and she used to parachute over France during the war as a spy, no biggie. And because her leg was cumbersome, she would take it off and put it in the back of her parachute backpack and then reattach it once she landed on the ground at night. She once helped escort Winston Churchill when he was trying to escape over the mountains into Spain. She walked through the Pyrenees. Oh my goodness, she had many, many adventures. She was an ambulance driver. It's just astounding. And I said to myself, wow, why hasn't someone written a story about this, like a novel, or why isn't there a movie? Apparently there is a movie. I don't know if it's any good. I haven't seen it. I just found the title of it, and I will check it out. It's called A Call to Spy, and it came out in 2019. So I am going to check that out. I'm going to see if there's any novelizations or other books on the topic, because I so want to read more about these spies. What a wonderful entry into studying the world wars through the lens of being a spy. And then another one in here, which was just incredible, was about the author Roald Dahl. And Roald Dahl, before he began to write children's stories like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the BFG, etc., he was a Royal Air Force pilot and spy. You may already know that, but what you may not know, which I learned from this book, is that Roald Dahl spied on Americans and came to the United States to spy on businessmen and politicians. So I did not know that. And yeah. So it's a light, quick read that gives you mini bios and very bright, beautiful illustrations. It's a fun book, and I recommend this if you're interested in World War II history or espionage history. Kind of along the same lines of getting into graphic novels, bright illustrations, and strong women in World War II storylines, I have started to get interested in the adventures of Wonder Woman. Okay, now I watched the movie Wonder Woman the other night. I used to watch the TV series in the 70s, which is campy and fun, and I would love to do a rewatch of that, actually, because you can still find it on TV. But I enjoyed the movie starring Gal Gadot for the most part. I thought it had a few issues with it, but overall it was just fun. For anyone who doesn't know, Wonder Woman is out of the DC Comics universe. She was created by William Moulton Marston in in 1941. She comes from the island of, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Themyscira, and she's known as Princess Diana of Themyscira. And so for right now, because trust me, it gets complicated. If you look up Wonder Woman graphic novels, you're going to find Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Modern Age, and then different incarnations within each one where people do different things with the story and different times and different universes, and there's different origins and different things happen. I, for right now, am mainly interested in the classic Golden Age origin story, which draws quite heavily on Greek mythology. So, again, with Historathon, studying ancient history and reading about the gods and goddesses, which I have been doing. I'll just use that as a segue to hold these two books up, because I'm currently reading both of these from Natalie Haynes. And Natalie Haynes is a historian. She's very funny. She talks about, in this one, Divine Might, she talks about goddesses in Greek myth. And then in this one, Pandora's Jar, she talks about women in the Greek myths, such as Clytemnestra and Pandora and Eurydice, Jocasta, etc., the Amazons. This one deals more with the goddesses. So I'm reading those. But then going back to Wonder Woman, Steve Trevor, an intelligence officer, crash lands off the coast of Themyscira Island, and Diana saves him and nurses him back to health, and he tells her about the world war raging outside in the world of men, and in different versions and different incarnations she goes off to help fight that. And then there's whole other timelines that are set in the 70s and the 80s and all of that. But anyway, it's a great deal of fun so far. This particular one is called The Legend of Wonder Woman Origins, but I'm also interested in getting a book I found used, but it's like $21. But it's a collection of the original 1940s cartoons along with an essay by Gloria Steinem. I'm not complaining about that. I'm there for it. And then finally, I've just been craving things that are sort of fun, light, sunny, warm, just in a different climate. I've been wanting my sunshine and vitamin D. And so oftentimes when that happens, I return to the #1 ladies detective agency by Alexander McCall Smith, and I love the TV show so much, and the novels are wonderful, the mysteries. I love the first one the most with Ma Romatswe, and it's just wonderful, and her detective agency in Gaborone. Her name is Precious Romatswe, and the other characters around her. So I've been reading that. And then I also downloaded the stories from Audible. There is a wonderful collection of the #1 ladies detective agency, and it's really well done. The names of the episodes are slightly different than the names of the novels, but they were all written, the screenplays were written by Alexander McCall Smith. So those are really fun, and you can get them all for one credit. You can get the whole collection. I think it's from the BBC. And then there's also a podcast that goes along with that called Mama Romatswe Podcast. And that takes on, much as the Agatha Christie, the Swinging Christies, looked at different social issues and culture surrounding Agatha Christie's novels of the 60s. This does the same thing with, everything from orphanages and cattle and farming and food and culture and music and schooling and all of that. in the world of Mamaruwatsue, and parts that are drawn on real life and what real agencies exist there and all of that. So it's just a discussion of the culture, which is really, really neat. Yeah, I love these books so much. So that's been a bright spot as well. So that's it for today. I know it's been a lot, but as you can see, I think I'm just really restless, feeling a bit distracted, and looking for some sunshine and vitamin D. And so this is how I have attempted to do that, and I've enjoyed everything I've watched and read, and I'm happy to share it with you. And I will be back next week with another video and bringing you some more titles for February, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.